Welcome back to another episode of With a Grain of Salt. I am your host, Isaiah Salter, and I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in for yet another week. Another episode. This week is going to be on navigating isolation and loneliness. I was doing a live stream a couple of days ago at the beginning of the week, and I was just asking an open-ended question, what are some topics or some things that everybody in the chat is trying to navigate? What are some things that you guys want me to touch on in the podcast? And, navigating isolation, navigating loneliness was something that came up a lot. And so I felt like it was the perfect, time to kind of touch this subject. And I know we've touched this before in the podcast early on in some of those early episodes with like navigating solitude, isolation, stuff like that. But it's so important to constantly, rekindle these messages and continue to dive into them as we, evolve and grow as individuals. And this week really resonates with me, this week's episode, because I'm currently going through a season where I feel a little bit isolated. And I feel like, I'm being pulled to really carve out space and time for myself and really do some inner work and, sit with myself and really face the things that come up during isolation, because, one of the blessings and tough things about isolation is that all the stuff that's kind of underlying that, we're not really paying attention to or that we're not really that conscious of, it surfaces up whenever you get put in that isolation, because now you're not really being distracted by external things. You're not, constantly around people. You're just in your space, and that's when all that stuff comes up. So it gives you a great opportunity to really dive deep within yourself, see the things that you need to work on, see the things you need to tend to, start to, face the things that you've been running away from or trying to escape for so long. And I'm speaking from, my perspective, because that's something that I'm currently really going through. And it bounces off, the last episode that we did with, navigating the vices and, the unhealthy habits. Like in isolation, that is where you really have to face those urges and those emotional attachments and the things that cause you to lean into those things, rather than running from it, rather than trying to find a way to cope with it or escape it. We're going to sit there and face it. We're going to sit there and be with ourselves. You know what I mean? And so let's get into it. It says, understanding isolation versus loneliness. That's point number one. We need to understand isolation versus loneliness because they're two totally different things. Isolation and loneliness is two totally different things. Isolation is the physical state of being alone, while loneliness is the emotional response to that state. You can be surrounded by people and still feel lonely, or be alone and still feel deeply connected, right? There is a big difference between isolation and loneliness. I think for me, when I really reflect on my life and I think about the times where I really felt the most lonely, it was when I was around, a lot of people, that was in school or whatever it may be, certain environments I was trying to navigate. I was around all these people and I just felt like I didn't connect or resonate with anybody. And that's when I really felt the most alone. It was just this cloud of disconnection I felt from everybody around me. And, that loneliness to me is far greater than the loneliness of, you just being literally alone, like, tucked off away from the world. And so being able to understand, like, there's a difference between being isolated, because even right now, currently, like, I feel like I'm in a season of isolation, but I don't feel necessarily lonely because, I have a connection to myself. I have a connection to, God, the universe, to the source, you know what I mean? And so when you have that connection, you might go through periods of isolation, or you will go through periods of isolation because that's the natural, rhythm of life. But feeling lonely during those things, that's something that you have to kind of lean into. If you're really feeling lonely when you go through periods of isolation, ask yourself why. What areas of myself are, or what parts of me have a void that's trying to be filled by external things, which is causing me to, feel lonely, whatever it may be. What is lacking from within myself? Those type of questions. It says loneliness often comes from a disconnection from yourself, others, or a deeper spiritual source. Absolutely. Yeah, one of the toughest parts of loneliness is when you realize it comes from a disconnection of self. A lot of us feel lonely because when we're alone, when we're not around people, or when we're, trying to navigate life, we don't even feel like we're connected to ourselves. That's a very, very hard thing to navigate. That's a very, very lonely feeling when you don't even feel connected to yourself, let alone not connected to other people, and it's like you're just kind of in this weird, middle ground. You don't really have any clarity. You don't really have any sense of direction. You don't really know what to do. And that loneliness just becomes this huge cloud over you. Like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? And it could get so overbearing that we try to find any and everything to help us with that feeling, to help us with that feeling. And that's what gets us involved with the wrong people. That's what gets us involved, with the wrong environments or the wrong groups or the wrong habits. And that's why it's so important to learn how to navigate it in a healthier way. How can we learn how to navigate those moments and seasons where we feel lonely in a healthier way? Because we're all going to experience it. As you grow, as you evolve, as you continue to level up in life, you're going to go through seasons and periods of your life where you feel lonely, right? Where you feel isolated, where you feel alone, where you feel disconnected from yourself. But like we always talk about, we have to start viewing these things as opportunities to learn, to grow, to heal, to better the relationship with ourselves, rather than things that are there to block us and stop us from growing. You feeling disconnected from yourself is an opportunity to lean into. Where is this disconnection coming from? How can I tend to the things within myself? How can I start to give myself space, energy, and time? How can I start to communicate with myself in a healthier way? How can I start to unpack the things that, are kind of underlying within myself? That's what loneliness and isolation gives you an opportunity to do. So we're going to view these things as opportunities, and we're going to lean into them with the right perspective, with the right energy, with the right mindset. Together. It says loneliness isn't solved by mere company. It's solved by connection, first with yourself. A lot of us are constantly trying to fill that void of loneliness by getting involved with people, relationships, trying to get accepted by all these social groups, whatever it is, just trying to be around people, trying to find, more company, more relationships. But if you don't first have a connection with yourself, it doesn't matter how many external relationships you have, you're always going to feel like something's not right? Because getting involved with people, getting into situations, getting around company from a place of not having a connection to yourself breeds loneliness. That is a prerequisite if you want to feel lonely. It does not matter how many people you have around you. If you don't feel a connection to yourself, you're always going to feel like something ain't right. You're always going to feel kind of lonely, and like we touched on, loneliness is not just when you're in your room alone. Oftentimes, people feel the most lonely when you're around the most amount of people and there's just no connection. You just feel like you're in a fish out of water. You know what I mean? And so understand that loneliness is not solved by just mere company. It's not about just getting more people around you. It's about learning how to develop the connection to yourself, right? When I feel lonely, I realize that's a sign that I need to go deeper within myself, develop a connection, a deeper connection with myself, spend more time with myself, right? It's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be times where I'm like, this is incredibly difficult. But we got to keep taking it one day at a time, one moment at a time, with a grain of salt. We got this. It says isolation can be a calling to deepen self-awareness and find peace in solitude. Oftentimes we get pushed into seasons of isolation in order to deepen our self-awareness and also to find peace in solitude. You need to learn how to find peace in being by yourself, right? That's one of the greatest things that you can cultivate in your life, is learning how to be at peace when you're alone, learning how to be at peace with the person staring back at you in the mirror. And a lot of times we'll be pushed into isolation. We'll go into seasons of isolation in order to cultivate that peace with ourselves, right? But usually what happens, because we live in a very externalistic society, when we get pushed into isolation, we think something is wrong. And so rather than focusing on finding peace in solitude, finding peace with being alone, we're trying to fill that void with all of these things. We're trying to find an escape from the isolation. And that's what gets us involved with the wrong people, doing the wrong things in the wrong situations, right? So When isolation comes into your life, where you feel like you're being pushed into isolation, you just kind of feel isolated from the people around you, from everything kind of going around. Understand it's an opportunity and it's a pull, it's a push from the universe to deepen your self-awareness and to find peace in solitude. How can I find peace in this time of isolation and solitude? How can I be at peace with myself? How can I learn to enjoy my own company? How often do we need to learn how to enjoy our own company? Learn how to enjoy your own company. That's what isolation and solitude allows for. It allows for you to learn how to enjoy your own company, how to be at peace with being by yourself. And that's a very, very important thing if you want to continue to grow and evolve, because like we've said, your life is going to move in seasons. So yes, you're going to have seasons of community and outreach, but you're also going to have to go through seasons of isolation and solitude. And if you don't learn how to be at peace with yourself alone, if you don't learn how to be okay being a little isolated because you know you got you, it's going to be incredibly difficult to keep growing and evolving, because you're going to have to go through those seasons of isolation. You're going to have to go through those seasons of solitude. You know, it's a part of you growing and evolving, you know, the same way nature goes through winter, spring, summer, fall. You're going to go through all different seasons of life. And one of those seasons is isolation. So how can we learn to shift our perspective on it and to navigate it in a healthier way? That's what this podcast is here for. That's what this podcast is here for. There's a quote that says, loneliness is not the absence of people. It's the absence of connection. A lot of people correlate being lonely with not having anybody. But true loneliness comes from a lack of connection. And often that lack of connection stems from a lack of connection with yourself into something deeper. Right? So rather than trying to find, more people to be around to fill that void of loneliness, learn how to cultivate a connection with yourself, a connection with the source. Right? Use that time for connection cultivating. Jean Paul says, if you are lonely when you're alone, you're in bad company. That's deep. If you are lonely when you're alone, you're in bad company. If when you get alone, you immediately default to feeling lonely, you got to start paying attention to that. Why, when I'm alone and I'm not around people, do I feel lonely? Why do I not enjoy spending time with myself? Why do I not feel whole when it's just me and me? Why? Ask those questions. Sit with yourself. Sit with those questions. Sit with those emotions. Sit with those feelings. Sit with those thoughts. Sit with yourself. More than anything, you need you during that time. More than anything, during loneliness, during periods of isolation, you need you. So show up for you during that time, right? Don't get so caught up in trying to find a fix externally that you neglect the relationship with yourself. View it as an opportunity to deepen the relationship with yourself. Yes, you could still use outside things, to help facilitate growth and healing, and evolution. But when you're in those periods of isolation, or when you're going through a season where you feel lonely, use it as an opportunity to deepen the relationship you have with yourself, to learn how to cultivate a connection with yourself. All right? Learn how to do that, because the most important relationship you have in this life is the one with yourself, because the relationship you have with yourself will directly affect the relationship you have with other people. The relationship you have with yourself will directly affect and impact the relationship you have with other people. Some tangible takeaways. It says, write down, what do I truly feel right now? What do I need? How can I give that to myself? That's one of the best prompts when you're going through a period of isolation, right? Whenever you can throughout your week, write down and sit with these questions. What do I feel right now? Maybe I feel loneliness. Maybe I feel some lack, right? Maybe I feel some inner friction, whatever it is. Maybe I feel some tension. I don't know why. What do I need, right? Write that down and sit with it. And maybe you don't know. That's okay, right? Sometimes asking questions isn't to get answers. It's just to open the door to a new way of thinking. Sometimes you don't ask the questions and always get an answer, but that's not the point of asking questions. You're asking questions so that you can shift into a better mindset, so you can start focusing on more aligned congruent things with the person that you're trying to become. How can I give that to myself, right? Sit with yourself. How can I learn how to give myself space, time, and energy, right? Intimacy, right? That's something that I've realized in my period of isolation that I'm currently navigating, is that I crave for intimacy. I really do, right? And I think for me personally, like, obviously I'm single. I haven't been in a relationship in a while, but, there's a part of me as a man, as a spiritual individual that, wants to hold that space for a woman and wants to, share those experiences and grow a life with somebody, right? And so, yeah, that's part of me is always going to yearn out. But I can't allow that yearning to make me rush into something that's not meant for me. I need to learn how to sit with myself, give myself space, and then also ask myself, how can I give myself that intimacy rather than getting involved with people out of that intimacy and just trying to fill that void? How can I learn how to give myself that space, right? How can I learn how to give myself that energy, Another tangible takeaway is the silent time challenge. Spend 10 to 15 minutes alone without distractions, no food, no phone, no music, no input, just observing your thoughts, right? This is why we talk about meditation. But when you're going through those periods of isolation, meditation is one of your best friends. Learn how to just sit with yourself, even if it's 5 minutes in the morning or at night or in the middle of the day, whenever you want to do it. Learn how to just sit with yourself. No stimulation from anything. Just sit and see what thoughts come up. Don't judge them as good or bad. Don't label them as this or that. Just sit with yourself and see and observe and be there with you, right? How often when we're going through tough situations do we just need somebody to just be with us? We don't need advice. We don't need them to tell us what we should or shouldn't do, right? We just need them to be there. We just need their presence. You got to learn how to give that to yourself sometimes. Sometimes it's not about figuring anything out. It's not about getting answers. It's about learning how to just sit with yourself, observe what's going on, and just be there. You don't need to figure anything out. You don't need to get all the right answers right now. You just need to learn how to sit with yourself and observe. It says the universe is always guiding us back to connection. Isolation is often an invitation to tune out external noise and to tune into our inner world, where the energy of love, wisdom, and truth exists. Isolation is often an invitation to tune out external noise and tune into our inner world. Whenever you're going through a season of isolation, view it as an invitation, not a burden. Don't view it as a blockage. View it as an invitation to start taking some space for you and looking inward, right? Maybe taking a pause from all these external things that you've been, indulging in, whether it's the social media, the relationships, different environments. I'm going to take a pause from that, and I'm going to view this time in this season of isolation as an invitation and an opportunity to go inward, to sit with myself, to meditate, to pray, to breathe, to observe. Isolation is an invitation. Isolation is an invitation. I love that too. It says where the energy of love, wisdom, and truth exists. Inner world. The inner world is where the energy of love, wisdom, and truth exist. So as you grow, as you evolve, as you want to, continue to become better and better, you're going to have to learn how to, take time to turn inward and tap into the energy that you have within yourself, the energy of love, the energy of wisdom, the energy of truth, the energy of authenticity. All that lies within you. It's just about taking space to turn your gaze inward. And it's a very hard thing to do in the society that we live in because we're so externally motivated. But you got to learn how to take a pause. And often, you'll be pushed into isolation in order to take that time, right? So when you get pushed into isolation, view it as an invitation, view it as an opportunity. Come on. It says, when you feel alone, it is the universe reminding you that connection does not come from outside of you. It is within. You are never separate from source. You are source. You are never separate from source. You are source. You are never separate from source. You are source. Repeat that to yourself as many times as you need to really feel that internally. You are not separate from source. You are source. The same power that was used to create everything in the known universe lives inside of you. You are source. You are a creator. You are a spiritual being having a human experience, right? How can we learn how to take a pause, turn inward, and tap into that? Tap into that source that you have within yourself. And it's not from an egotistical place. It's not from I got to do it all on my own. No. Understand that is where the creator of the universe lies, within yourself. To tap in to the source you have within yourself is to tune in to the creator. It's a connection. It's a connection. Rumi says, you are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. In moments of loneliness, instead of seeking external validation, try meditating on the fact that you are already whole, already connected to the infinite. Number 2, the gift of solitude. The gift of solitude. It says there is power in being alone. It's where self-discovery happens. Many breakthroughs come in moments of solitude. I can attest to that. Many breakthroughs come in moments of solitude. I often reflect on my journey. I often tell people that, when I really started to make a shift in my life, I was forced into solitude, right? I was really forced into solitude because when I was in the psychiatric hospital, when I'm in that environment, you don't know nobody in there. There's no phone. There's no TVs. There's no video games. There's no social media. There's none of that. So you're forced into solitude in there. And so it was through those moments where I realized how powerful solitude was. At first, I fought it. At first, it was incredibly difficult to navigate. At first, I was like, why me? Why is this happening? This is the worst thing ever. But I came to realize that there is so much transformation and discovery in solitude. And rather than running from it, I'm going to learn how to start using it as a tool for growth, as a tool for self-discovery, right? And so many of my personal breakthroughs, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, came from those deep moments in solitude, truthfully. It says, instead of resisting isolation, ask, what is this season trying to teach me, right? What is this season trying to teach me? When I felt that internal shift, then I started to just feel that energy, kind of all around me of like really moving into a season of isolation. Rather than like running around or doing all these things, I took a pause and I said, I am open to this season. I receive whatever this season has for me. What is this season trying to teach me? I'm open to the growth. I'm open to the discovery, right? And that already, what it does when you ask those type of questions, like we said, it shifts the way you view and perceive what you're going through, right? Rather than asking, right, if I was so quick to be like, isolation, why me? Why now? This is the worst thing ever. That's the lens in which I'm looking through the situation at, right? But when I shift to, what is this teaching me? How can I grow from this? How can I deepen the connection with myself in this? Now I'm shifting to a lens looking through those type of questions, right? And it's a totally different experience you'll get depending on the lens in which you look through. It says being alone is a mirror. It reflects what you need to face and heal within yourself. Being alone is a mirror. It reflects what you need to face and heal within yourself. That is a fact. There's been so many times in my journey where I've moved into a season of isolation and solitude, and so many things came up. And I was like, hold on. I did not know these things were underlying, right? I did not know these things were underlying. And at first, it can be incredibly overwhelming. It can be incredibly scary. But they're not coming up to scare you. They're not coming up. Those things aren't coming up so that, you hide in the corner and run away from them or they beat you down. No, they're coming up so that you can work with them, so that you can learn how to navigate them, so that you can learn how to heal them, right? Like those emotions, those thoughts, those limiting beliefs, right? The blockages, they come up so that you can overcome them. They're not coming up so that you run away or try to escape or to frighten you or to make you feel like you're not good enough or like you're not adequate. No, they're coming up so that you can grow and heal through them, right? So we're grateful. We're grateful that in those times of solitude, in those times of being alone, those things surfaced, right? It may be hard. It may be difficult. It is challenging, but I'm grateful that those things came up because it showed me the things I need to work on. And if I'm trying to grow, if I'm trying to evolve and be the best version of myself, then I need those things to come up so I know what I have to work on and overcome in order to step into the things that are for me. So when things come up, we're not going to run from them. We're going to face them with self-compassion. We're going to face them with faith. We're going to face them with intention. It says the greatest thinkers, artists, and leaders have used solitude as a time for deep transformation. Absolutely. When you really, really shift your perspective on solitude and you really navigate one of those seasons in a healthy and aligned way, and you come out the other end and you see how powerful solitude truly is, you're going to start using it in the future as a time for deep transformation, for deep cultivation, for deep growth, because you understand the power that lies within solitude is so great. And if I move through this season with intentionality, if I move through this season with the right perspective, I can come out a more aligned, authentic, better version of myself. Marty Rubin says, solitude is where one discovers one is not alone. So often we feel alone, we feel lonely, but when you really go into those seasons of isolation and intentional solitude, and you really start to show up and spend time with yourself, you realize you're not alone. You never were alone. You were just lacking that connection from yourself. You were just lacking that connection from the divine, right? And solitude gives us an opportunity to rekindle that connection. That's already there. It's already there. It's not about creating something that isn't there. It's about tapping into what is already there. That's the beauty of solitude and isolation. It's an opportunity to tap into the things that are already within you. They've just been neglected or overlooked because we've been so outward focused. But isolation and solitude give us a chance to take a pause. It gives us the opportunity to look inward and tap into the things you already have. That's a beautiful thing. T. Harv says, your inner world creates your outer world. That's a fact. Your inner world creates your outer world. You don't attract in life what you want. You attract in life what you are. So often people try to change the outer world, right? The outer circumstances, right? The outer outcomes without ever changing the inner world that they have going on, right? Prime example. Like we said, you don't attract in life what you want. You attract in life what you are. If you are internally operating from a place of fear, lack, shame, guilt, condemnation, right? If that's what you're really cultivating inside of yourself, if that's what is your default inner world, that is what's going to reflect itself in the external world that you live in, the external reality. And why do you think it's so tough, for so many people when they're trying to change, when they're trying to grow? Because all we do is focus on changing the external without ever tending to the internal. So we stay in those very, very low vibrational states, but we try to change the external things into, more abundance, into more healthy and aligned relationships, whatever it may be, but we never change this. And we keep getting back all of these things that we're trying to get away from, and we don't know why. It's because we're not actually getting to the root of why we keep getting these outcomes in our life, right? Your inner world creates your outer world. So if there's things going on around you in your external world that you keep getting in your life, whether it's a certain type of person, relationship, situation, whatever it may be, rather than always trying to change the person, the situation, the external thing, take a look within yourself and see what's cultivating within you that's attracting those type of things. And let's start to tend to those. Because once you change internally, I promise you, there will be a change externally. Once you change internally, there will be a change externally. Some tangible takeaways for point number 2. It says, reframe the narrative. It says, every time you feel lonely, replace the thought, I am lonely, with, I am in a season of deep transformation. Whenever I am lonely comes up, nope, I'm just in a season of deep transformation. Come on. Solo adventure. Go on a walk. Take yourself out on a date. Or travel alone. Learn how to enjoy your own company. The only way, right, if you're in a relationship with somebody, the only way to learn how to enjoy the company of that person is to spend time with them, right? Take them out on dates, go for walks, travel together, whatever it may be. Learn how to, do different things in the company of that person. It's the same with yourself. If you want to develop the relationship you have with yourself, you need to learn how to enjoy your own company. So you have to do things by yourself. I got to go for a walk by myself sometimes. Maybe I need to go out to eat by myself, go to a movie, right? Travel alone, whatever it may be. I need to learn how to enjoy my own company, because what good is it to have all these relationships around me if I don't even like being with myself? If I don't even have a relationship with myself? Come on. It says solitude is the universe's way of pulling you inward. It's where clarity, creativity, and deep healing happen. So when I'm going through a season of solitude, when I'm going through a season of isolation, and I feel like, I'm being pulled to really carve out that solitude, I'm going to view it as the Creator's way of pulling me inward, as the universe guiding me towards inner healing, inner growth, right? Tapping into some inner transformation. When you are in solitude, you are in the purest connection with Source, because there are no distractions, only presence. The deeper you go within, the closer you get to the energy of love that has always been guiding you. The deeper you go within, the closer you get to the energy of love that has always been guiding you. Always. Love has always been guiding you. It's just about, have you been in tune with it? Have you been connected to it? Right? It says, in solitude, surrender to the present moment. Instead of resisting being alone, feel into it and breathe into it. We're not going to resist being alone. When we're going through those seasons of isolation, we feel lonely. We're not going to resist it. We're not going to fight it. We're going to feel into it. We're going to breathe into it. We're going to sit and observe it. Because that's the only way that you'll ever be able to grow through it. If you keep trying to resist, run, escape, you'll never actually, overcome these things and grow through these things. You'll just find something externally to help fill that void, to help distract you, and then keep going about your day. And then you think, oh, I'm all good now. But the moment isolation comes again, that thing's going to resurface tenfold. Oh my gosh, I got to find something new to fill that void. How about we stop trying to find things to fill that void, and how about we start sitting with it, feeling it, breathing into it, just observing it. Come on. Number 3, shifting from loneliness to connection. Shifting from loneliness to connection. It says loneliness is a signal. It tells you something is missing. Instead of numbing it, lean into it. Listen to it. Instead of numbing it, lean into it and listen to it. We're done numbing the pain. We're going to learn how to sit with it. We're going to learn how to lean into it. We're going to learn how to listen to it. Because the more we numb it, the more we compound it. We don't want that. We don't want that. Ask, where am I lacking connection? Is it with myself? Is it with others? Or the greater energy that flows through everything? Am I lacking in love in my life? True love, unconditionally, right? Where am I lacking in connection? Where is this void of loneliness coming from? This feeling of loneliness coming from? It says the depth of your relationship with yourself determines the quality of your relationship with others. The depth of your relationship with yourself determines the quality of your relationship with others. The beautiful thing about, the relationships we have with other people is they're mirrors, they're reflections of the relationship that we have with ourselves, right? So if you want to learn more about yourself, have the awareness through the relationships you have with other people, right? Pick up on the things that align, pick up on the things that don't. Start to navigate in that way, right? But the depth of your relationship with yourself determines the quality of your relationship with others. Come on. So many people wonder why they have so many unhealthy relationships, so many toxic relationships. Take a look at the relationship you have with yourself and be honest. This isn't a time for self-judgment. This isn't a time for self-condemnation. This isn't a time for shame and guilt. This is a time for honest self-reflection. Because the only way for us to grow, heal, and become more aligned is we have to be honest about the things that we're going through. And that includes the relationship you have with yourself. So if you're seeing all of these, unhealthy cycles or loops that keep playing in your life when it comes to relationships, if you keep attracting the same type of person, if you keep getting involved with very toxic people, toxic situations, rather than always focusing on just changing the person and, getting somebody new, take a honest look at the relationship you have with yourself and be real. What does that look like? Do you enjoy your own company? Are you at peace with the person staring back at you in the mirror? Do you truly love yourself? Do you give yourself time and energy and space? Right? Are you really actively working towards cultivating a better relationship with yourself? Be honest. Be honest. It says you can cultivate connection in very small moments. Eye contact when somebody's talking to you. A deep conversation. Or being present with nature. Right? Just a few days ago, it was 2 days ago, I went on a light little 5-mile run. Right? And afterwards, I just started walking because I was in this nature trail. I just started walking and I just sat with nature. And I just felt so connected. I just felt so present, and overflowing with, love and peace. Almost got emotional, Sometimes that's what the presence of nature can do, So if you want to cultivate more connection in your life, you can cultivate it through the small moments, right? Through the small moments. Brene Brown says, the longing for connection is at the heart of our humanity. That's beautiful. Some tangible takeaways for point number 3. Micro connections. Each day, intentionally engage with one person. Send a voice note, ask a thoughtful question, or truly listen to someone. Micro connections. Each day, we're going to intentionally engage with one person in a small way, right? Set that out. Set that out as a goal for you, to really start focusing on developing connection in your life. Self-connection journal. Each night, write down 3 ways you connected with yourself that day. Was it through stillness? Was it through movement? Was it through creativity? Was it through reflection? Each night, write down 3 ways you connected with yourself that day. And start to pick up on the areas where you're fostering connection with yourself, and then feed more into those things, right? Feed more into those things. It says the universe is always communicating with you, always flowing through you. When you feel disconnected, it is often because you have forgotten that you are already... This is deep. It says the universe is always communicating with you, always flowing through you. When you feel disconnected, it is often because you have forgotten that you are already part of everything. What's understood don't even need to be explained. That hits. It says loneliness is the illusion of separation. The truth is, the same energy that makes up the stars, the oceans, and the trees is the same energy within you. You are always connected. It's just about remembering. You are always connected. It's just about tuning in. It's just about tuning in, right? That radio station is always playing. It's just about tuning the radio to that station so you can hear the music, right? Which is connection, which is love, right? Which is source, divine. Number 4, finding purpose in isolation. It's beautiful. I love this title. I love this key title, this point title. Finding purpose in isolation. Sometimes isolation is intentional. It's a reset, a space to break away from external noise and realign with purpose. For me, the way I like to view, isolation and solitude is isolation is an inherent part of life. You're going to go through seasons of isolation. Solitude is when you bring intention to that isolation, right? I'm really going to carve out solitude during this period and season of isolation, right? I'm going to view it as a reset. I'm going to view it as a space to break away from external noise and realign with purpose. Realign with purpose, which is internal, right? That's why you have to look inward during seasons of isolation. Purpose is not external, it's internal. It's in who you are. Many great transformations start in solitude. Monks, artists, and athletes all use isolation for mastery. That's a fact, like we touched on earlier. It says, your purpose isn't found in a crowd. It's cultivated in stillness and then shared with the world. The process is often hidden. The results are often seen, right? Your purpose is usually cultivated in times of solitude, isolation, and stillness. The expression of it is usually shared with the world. Come on. Isolation can be the bridge between who you are and who you are becoming. Yes, isolation can be the bridge between who you are and who you are becoming, right? Often we reach these places on our journey where, okay, we've hit kind of like the end point of this version of ourselves, and we're about to level up, we're about to step up. Usually what comes, in that period of who you are and who you're becoming is a period of isolation, is a season of isolation, right? And it's incredibly tough to navigate. It's incredibly difficult at times to figure out what's going on, whatever it may be. But understand that it's a bridge. I'm going to use it as a bridge to really step into this more aligned, authentic version of myself. Come on. And that's literally what I'm going through right now. That is literally verbatim what I'm going through right now. So shout out to the script. Rumi says, in the silence of your heart, you will find the truth of who you are. In the silence of your heart, you will find the truth of who you are. The truth lies within you. It's just about being intentional with taking space, being intentional with solitude, being intentional with stillness, being intentional with listening to what's already there. Yes, intentional stillness. This is a tangible takeaway. Intentional stillness. Instead of mindless distractions, use solitude for intentional growth. Read, meditate, or work on a meaningful project. Absolutely. Intentional solitude, not unintentional isolation. Right? There's a big difference between just being isolated and actually being intentional with solitude, right? So I'm not going to just be isolated and then I'm not going to be going through a period or season of isolation and just be scrolling every day, doing mindless stuff unintentionally. No, I'm going to have the awareness that I'm going through a season of isolation, and then I'm going to turn it into intentional solitude with reading, meditation, working on meaningful things, right? Whatever it may be, whatever daily grains you use to bring, yourself some grounding and intention. You do that. It says the universe works in cycles, expansion and contraction. Isolation is often the contraction before the expansion. It is preparing you, refining you, and strengthening you for what's next. Come on. Isolation is often the contraction before the expansion. We have to go through these periods of isolation in order to expand into that more aligned, authentic version of ourselves, in order to really step into the things that are for us. Isolation is an invitation. Isolation is an opportunity to step into expansion. Come on. It says, just like a seed is buried before it blooms, you may feel like nothing is happening in isolation, but in reality, everything is happening beneath the surface. That's one of the most beautiful things, but toughest things to navigate during seasons of isolation and solitude. You may feel like nothing is happening, but just like a seed is buried before it blooms, everything is happening beneath the surface. You just have to trust in the process. You have to trust in divine timing, right? Understand that I may be going through a season of isolation, and I may feel like things are stagnant, things aren't really happening. Understand there's stuff going on underneath that you can't see. You just have to trust. God is watering you and prepping you for an amazing sprout, for an amazing season of blooming. Believe it, receive it, achieve it. It says, be patient. Everything is aligning. You are exactly where you're meant to be. Come on. You are exactly where you're meant to be. And where you are may not be what you necessarily desire, but understand every moment of your journey serves a purpose. Every season is serving a purpose. So understand you're exactly where you need to be. I just need to embrace it. Rather than fighting it, trying to get to what I feel like I should be, I'm just going to embrace where I am, trusting that I'm here for a reason. It's serving a greater purpose. It's helping align me with the best version of myself. So I'm going to embrace it. One moment at a time, one day at a time, with a grain of salt. Trust that your isolation isn't punishment. It's a sacred cocoon. When the time is right, you will emerge with new wisdom, purpose, and energy. Isolation is not punishment. It's a sacred cocoon. When the time is right, you will emerge with new wisdom, purpose, and energy. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. And the final message for this episode says, isolation and loneliness aren't things to fear. They are a part of the journey. They are invitations to go deeper within yourself. within your purpose, within the infinite energy that you are already connected to. Instead of resisting them, embrace them. They are not empty spaces. They are sacred times. You are not alone. You are everything. You are love. You are energy. You are source itself. And in every moment, even in solitude, you are deeply connected. So for anybody out there that's navigating a season of isolation, maybe you're feeling a bit lonely, understand you're not alone. I'm navigating that season currently. We're doing it together. And remember that isolation is an invitation and it's an opportunity and it's serving a greater purpose. So let's embrace it with the right perspective. Let's embrace it with the right energy. And let's embrace it with a grain of salt. I will catch you guys in the next episode. Love and appreciate y'all. I'm out.